Welcome to Drugs and Stuff, a podcast from the Drug Policy Alliance. And now your hosts, Tommy McDonald and Derek Rosenfeld.
Hey everybody, welcome into Drugs and Stuff. This is the place where smart people talk about drugs. I'm your host, Tommy McDonald, and I'm here with Derek Rosenfeld.
And this is Malik Burnett. We're sitting with former DPA staffer in D.C. working on medical marijuana.
Shout out to ONA.
And the marijuana legalization campaign back in 2014.
That's right.
Tell us about your time down there.
Oh man, DPA is hands down the coolest place that I've ever worked in my life. First of all, shout out to Bill Piper and Grant Smith holding it down at ONA. I got in 2014 April time frame, and then came to work on the legalization efforts in DC, ballot initiative. First ballot initiative focused around racial justice as a principal reason for ending marijuana prohibition in D.C. You know, the arrest rates for people of color were, nationally they're 4-1, but in D.C. they were 8-1. And so there was some real sort of biased enforcement there, around roughly 4,000 arrests a year in 2014. And so I had come from general surgery in Massachusetts town and was really motivated around trying to, do something about this. And so ran a campaign focused on racial justice. We did some pre-election polling at the time, and support in communities of color was around 30%. They weren't really feeling it east of the river. And, the fact that we ran the racial justice focused campaign moved the support in communities of color to 68%. And we ultimately ended marijuana prohibition in 2014 with 70% of the vote in D.C., so it was dope.
Nice. So I made a small error when introducing you. That's right. This is Dr. Malik Burnett.
Shut up.
Doctor as in MD.
Yeah.
Oh, my God.
General surgeon, Duke.
Yeah.
He's got some titles and titles. Yeah, I'm looking at your shirt right now. What is that? Doctors for Cannabis Regulation? Do you want to give a quick plug?
Yeah, sure. Doctors for Cannabis Regulation is one of the ventures that I have found myself to be a part of post-DPA. It is the first organization of physicians actively working on promoting cannabis legalization as an issue and getting the physician voice involved in this from a regulatory standpoint, focusing on public health and the public health reasons for ending cannabis prohibition. So lots of cool MDs, some people you guys may recognize, Sue Sicily, Sunil Agarwal. The head is David Nathan. It's his mastermind. So very cool organization. We're a young, fledgling bunch, but growing slowly.
So, let's take it back a little bit.
Sure.
I'm interested to know, just given your background, how you decided to go into this work to, work on marijuana law reform. I mean, your background, as Derek touched on early, is, you're a trained surgeon. What made you want to take that nice Duke education that your and Johns Hopkins education that your dad, who is here,
shout out to Dad.
Shout out to Mr. Burnett. I'm really glad to see him. We see the apple doesn't fall far from the tree. I got to give it up. Shout out to the gene pool.
Indeed.
Nice. But what made you want to get into this work of marijuana law reform after being trained as a surgeon?
Yeah, so this is an interesting world, right? So I was also have a business background. I have an MBA as well from Duke. Paid them a lot of money back in the day. But anyway, I was always involved in social justice work at Duke, working with communities of color, talking about voter rights and some of the contemporary, or I guess not very contemporary, but historical issues surrounding, Black people and communities of color, just in terms of representation and good work. Then I jumped deeply into medicine and, was well on the road to being a surgeon. Went to California for a conference one time and, for the first time was introduced to medical marijuana. Went to get my medical marijuana card at Venice Beach, and I don't know if you guys have been to Venice Beach. I'm sure you guys have been to Venice Beach. It's like...
Oh, yeah, I was there this weekend.
Yeah, and it's like one of these sort of places where, you can get your card from a person who's like sitting with a marijuana leaf sign on the ground. And so, saw how they go about doing medical marijuana. This was back in like 2008, 2009 timeframe. Met a guy who claimed to be a doctor who had on some sweatpants and a stethoscope as the doctor, and I was like, wait, like, I could do this better, I think, if there was ever opportunity for me to be able to get involved in this, like, and really explore, the medical benefits. And so I was going about my life, fast forward now 5 years, 2012, and Massachusetts legalizes medical marijuana. And I'm like, hey, I'm in the state with like a research capital of America. We can really do some clinical outcomes research stuff on this, and went through the process of getting on board there, and then read The New Jim Crow by Michelle Alexander, which kind of like was like a gut check. And she was like, wait, hold up, I'm thinking about this thing the whole wrong way, right? Like, yeah, there's all this great research that's cannabis related, but there's like much more critical issues around the drug policy game that are not even being discussed in any real sort of way. And so after I read that book, I really started digging deep into the whole world and notion. And I personally think that, and ended up writing in the HuffPost, which you guys helped get in there. Drug policy is one of the civil rights issues of the 21st century. So that's kind of how it all started.
And Michelle, as she can do so well whenever she speaks about this issue, she drove home the point that race and racial justice needs to be at the center of our fight to end the war on drugs. That was
no doubt
a very, very clear message yesterday. And fast forward from Massachusetts to when you went to D.C., the legalization campaign there, I mean, that was one of the very first legalization campaigns that was driven by and won on the messaging of the racial disparities and the arrests that were happening there. Like you mentioned before, that was the core of our messaging and the advertising we did. You want to talk about that and how that came to be?
Yeah, no, it was huge. I was thinking, as I was brought on to run the campaign, we were working with some of the grassroots organizers there. Adam Eidinger is one of the mainstay people who wrote the ballot initiative and set it up. So much props to him for being the lead on that. But as I was thinking about how we were going to run a campaign in D.C., and like I said before, the numbers in D.C. Were particularly egregious for communities of color. And if people aren't familiar with D.C., D.C. is segregated like most other cities in America, but it's segregated right down the middle of 14th Street. Just to give people a visual representation, you can picture D.C. as a diamond, and in the diamond there's a split right down the middle, and on the right side of the diamond is where all the black people and people of color live, and on the left side of the diamond is where all the white people live. And so like ACLU did a mapping of arrests in the District of Columbia, and basically all of the arrests were on the right side of the diamond and none of the arrests were on the left side of the diamond. And mind you, on the left side of the diamond you also have American, Georgetown, and all of these major colleges inside the District of Columbia. And so like people smoke, Howard's kind of in the middle. It's kind of weird, right? It's in the middle, right? So like, but it's on the right side, there's not really many colleges, just a whole bunch of, people of color in neighborhoods, and like all of the arrests are over there. And we all know that at college, people really get down and, blow some tree. So,
no.
Yeah, man, it's all the rage. Trust me, I've been in education forever. So, like, you can get it in, right?
All those wacky kids today.
Exactly. So, like, it was totally shocking. Well, it wasn't shocking, but it was just reaffirming to the fact that, there was a huge disparity. And prior to me getting there, Grant Smith and people down at ONA were doing a major decrim bill, which I, think set the framework for what it is that we did with the legalization effort.
Grant, we love you.
Yeah, exactly. He helped set the stage, at least at the council level, for the racial disparities conversation, right? And so as we were going about the campaign, I thought to myself, well, the worst case scenario for us to be able to lose this campaign would be somebody to come in and organize the communities of color and the churches, the black pastors, to be totally against this and mount a contentious, sort of racially divisive anti-campaign against legalizing. So I was like, well, to basically prevent that from happening, let's just go into the communities and tell them like, hey, these laws are being enforced against you guys unilaterally, right? Like the way to, better the community is to at least begin by ending cannabis prohibition. And so there was a little bit of contention there. There was like some research around, saying if we message intentionally around race relations that people will be turned off and may not vote for a ballot initiative effort. But we put that issue to rest because we were able to, intentionally focus on racial justice and win.
Mm-hmm. We're talking with Dr. Malik Burnett, former DPA staff member in our D.C. Office of National Affairs. I just want to explain that shout out to Grant Smith. We're thinking about him. Grant Smith, Deputy Director of D.C. office, been with DPA over 10 years, struggling with the medical fight right now.
Get well soon, my dude.
Yeah, we send you the best, Grant.
We'll need you back in the game. Get real soon. Doc, before you get out of here, I definitely want to ask you this question. You know, you were instrumental in ensuring that we had a racial justice component to our marijuana legalization campaign. And one of the things that we did in California was insist a more equitable process, you know, in getting licenses to ensure that people of color don't get left out of this booming, emerging legal market once again.
Yeah.
You can be sort of seen as a beacon and a mentor as, you know, what people of color can do in this business. How would you advise people of color if they ask, how can I get in this? Should I participate in this legal market? Is it going to be safe? Or is it a situation, you know, how can I not get left out again?
Right. One thing I would say, and I tell this to everybody, black, white, brown, or otherwise, is make sure you know the rules of the game, right? Like, you got to understand how the regs are being set up, what your rules are to be able to get involved. You know, one thing I will say about the California model that I think is brilliant and very much, I can say from personal experience, working towards allowing more people from diverse backgrounds to get in is, one, they push the decision-making capacity all the way down to the municipal, local level. So normally in other states, like basically in order to get a license, you got to know the governor. Right, like how many people know the governor in a state? Yeah, you may see him on TV, but like you actually have to know the governor or have like a lobbyist to be able to get to the governor to be able to get one of these licenses. If you push the decision-making process down to the local level, it's much more likely that somebody's going to know their city council member or, you know, their local representative because they live in the neighborhood or they like, you have kids together that go to a community event. And the second thing that I think was great about California and really advanced the ball on racial justice was they divvied up the licensing types to small, medium, and large licenses across cultivators, dispensaries, and product processors so that you don't have to have $1 million in the bank in order to be able to participate in the legal economy. It allows for small business operators to be able to get in. So one thing I'd say is, you know, as we go forward, take that as a model, implement it across more states. But if you're looking and you're not in a state that has set up like California, make sure you know the laws, start getting involved, go to the, you know, community events where they're talking about this issue, look to try to be a resource and add value wherever your skill sets are in the space. You may not necessarily have to be a grower, dispensary operator, or a processor, but cannabis is a brand new industry. And if you have a skill set that you're really good at outside the world of cannabis, I'm sure that there's a need for that skill set inside the world of cannabis. So.
You're listening to Dr. Malik Burnett. Before you leave, is there anything you want our listeners to know about what you're up to?
Yeah.
And how they can support what you're doing?
Yeah. So all the physicians out there, you know, we're always looking for more physicians. So Doctors for Cannabis Regulation is growing and, you know, looking to be an active voice in the fight to end cannabis prohibition. So if you want to go check out Doctors for Cannabis Regulation, it's www.dfcr.org. You can definitely get involved there. I'm also working on a couple of side projects in the cannabis space, which are not ready for prime time just yet. But, you know, when those get ready, I'll be trying to be the change that you want to see in the world, right? So, like, there's not a lot of people of color who are operating, so I'm trying to do that too. But when those are ready, hopefully I can come back on drugs and stuff and talk about it.
Right on. You're welcome anytime. You all have been listening to one of my favorite people. This is Dr. Malik Burnett. I'm not going to lie. You're one of my favorites, man.
Hey, man. It's always good to see you guys. You guys make me smile, man, all the time. Thanks so much for the time.
Thanks for coming through, brother. Thanks for everything you're doing.
Thanks.
Drugs and Stuff is brought to you by the Drug Policy Alliance. If you like what you hear on the podcast, do us a favor and rate the show on iTunes. Give it 5 stars and a nice review. Also, we love to hear from you. Tweet at us at drugsandstuffdpa, use the hashtag drugsandstuff, and check out our website drugpolicy.org to see the other work we do, sign up for our emails, and donate. Special thanks to our producer, Catherine Heller, and to the hardworking staff of the Drug Policy Alliance for all of their work. Thanks for listening.